the WNBA is waking up to a hard reality. With Caitlin Clark officially sidelined for the rest of the season, the league isn't just losing its brightest star on the floor. It's losing the engine that powered sellouts, spiking TV ratings, sponsorship deals, and mainstream attention all summer. What comes next isn't just a basketball question. It's a test of whether the WNBA can sustain momentum without the player who drew millions of new fans into the building. That puts a heavy public spotlight on the rest of the WNBA's biggest names. And whether it's fair or not, a disproportionate share of that pressure now lands on Angel Reese. She is, at the moment, the only player in the league whose name consistently trends outside the core women's basketball audience. That level of recognition carries responsibility in a season with no Caitlin Clark on the court. The question is whether Reese and other young stars are ready to carry the weight of mainstream interest while the Fever's franchise guard gets healthy. Caitlin Clark. It unrolled in slow motion. A quad strain in May. Groin issues in June and July. A bone bruise in August. Each one seemed like a hurdle she could clear with rest and treatment. Together, they formed a pattern. By the time the Fever shut her down, Coach Stephanie White said out loud what many had been whispering privately. There simply wasn't enough time left for Clark to return safely. The league made an announcement. The fan base felt the air rush out. And then the anger started. Part of the frustration isn't about the injuries alone, but the environment around them. All season long, critics and casual fans alike have argued that Clark took more hard contact and borderline hits than any other player in the league. Clips circulated constantly. Holds off the ball, forearms on curls, bumps on drives, arms hooked on rebounds. Not all of it dirty. Not all of it illegal. But cumulatively, it added up. It felt like a weekly endurance test for the one player almost everyone paid to see. Angel Reese's role in that conversation has been obvious to anyone who has scrolled through social media since May. She leaned into the rivalry. She celebrated physicality. The theatrics, winks, waves, poses, played well on TikTok and in certain arenas. But that same attitude turned large chunks of the season into something ugly for fans who showed up to see competitive excellence, not pushing and shoving storylines that felt closer to a reality show than a professional league trying to prove it deserves equal respect. The officiating didn't help. In her rookie year, Clark reportedly absorbed a disproportionate share of flagrant fouls compared to the league, and this season, fans pointed to similar patterns. They noticed Sophie Cunningham taking extra heat. They noted Aaliyah Boston absorbing heavy contact inside. They noticed inconsistency from game to game. The perception grew that Clark wasn't being protected, that holding and grabbing off the ball were being tolerated, and that a cynical game plan, wear her down, had been given too much room to work. Whether you agreed with that read or not, the optics were terrible. The WNBA spent all summer proudly releasing numbers about ticket sales, jersey sales, viewership records, and sponsorship growth. Those press releases were real and deserved. But as the months went on, the message from fans changed. If you can monetize your biggest star, you can protect her too. The idea that the league failed to do that is what has many fans angriest today. The backlash didn't stop at commentary. It affected behavior. Ticket sales for premium games, especially those circled as Caitlin Clark showcases, dipped hard after her season-ending update. Secondary markets were flooded with resale listings. Prices that soared in early June for All-Star Weekend in Indiana fell sharply in late August. The event still held meaning. But without Clark, it didn't feel like the crown jewel the league had promised. The debate around Angel Reese's comments then poured gasoline on a fire already burning. She said recently that in 20 years she'll look back and say people didn't tune in for just one person. It was because of me too. On one level, that's an understandable point for a young star to make. The sport needs many faces. It cannot rely on one. On another level, it landed wrong with a fan base still raw about Clark's status. It came across as jealousy dressed up as confidence, especially to those who believe Reese has benefited most from the attention Clark brought into the WNBA. This is where context matters. Bigger crowds at Chicago Sky home games this year. Many of them were Indiana Fever crowds. Primetime windows bought on the back of Caitlin Clark's draw. Reese got to share in those audiences. The reality is simple. A rising tide lifts all boats, and Clark's arrival brought the kind of wave the league has waited decades to catch. That truth doesn't make Reese responsible for Clark's injuries. It does make the optics of minimizing Clark's impact hard to swallow. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark did something that cut through the noise. She spoke. Her statement read like the kind of letter every athlete hopes they never have to write. I had hoped to share a better update, but I will not be returning to play this season. I spent hours in the gym every day with the singular goal of getting back out there. Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling. I want to thank everyone who had my back through all the uncertainty. She went on to salute her teammates, to thank fans, and to set a new goal, return at full strength for the 2026 season. Alongside that note, Indiana Fever COO and GM Amber Cox said the quiet part out loud. Time is not on our side, Cox said. There is not enough time left in our season for her to safely return, and her long-term health and well-being remains our top priority. It was a sober statement and the right one. It also raised an uncomfortable question. If that was the priority now, why did Clark go day-to-day so many times this summer? In hindsight, would a firmer timeline in June or July have spared some of the frustration and allowed better planning for fans and broadcasters? The scheduling choices from the spring and early summer didn't help. The Fever played in big buildings on the road, an intentional decision by opponents who knew Clark would sell them out. Those moves were good business, but bad for optics when she was later shut down. It felt to many like Clark was paraded everywhere the league could fit her, even while she toggled between questionable and probable. To her credit, she wanted to play. To the league's detriment, precautionary felt like a public relations word rather than a medical approach. When you don't give injuries time, they compound. Anyone who follows sports understands that. There's a reason fans will tell you they're more angry about communication than outcome. One prominent radio host said it plainly. If the Fever had just said 6 to 8 weeks back in July, people would be upset but not betrayed. The day-to-day dance is what did the damage. It wasn't just the injury list. It was the trust. Those emotions spilled beyond Indiana. In some corners of the internet, fans began organizing boycotts of select games, of playoff dates, of marquee television windows that no longer featured the Fever and Clark. Some of that is pure anger in the moment. Some of it is a shot across the bow to the league office. Take player safety and officiating seriously, or your paying customers will find a way to make you listen. None of this is happening in a vacuum. The WNBA is reaching an inflection point. It is expanding to the Bay Area in 2025. It is negotiating media rights that could set the revenue floor for the next decade. It is more visible than it has ever been. And yes, it is fragile. Any league that leans too hard on one name can find itself wobbly when that name goes on the injury list. That makes the Angel Reese piece of this story both unavoidable and tricky. Reese is polarizing by nature, confident by design, and extremely effective at building her brand in a new media world. She also walks into a different type of spotlight now. If she wants to be the face of a star-driven league, she has to meet the moment with more than bravado. That means empathy when a rival falls. That means elevation of the product when the smoke machines are not pointed at her. That means proving she can draw interest at home and on the road without Clark on the court. Last summer's unrivaled numbers didn't help her case. The exhibition series averaged roughly 221,000 viewers, a figure that some news outlets called a success, but that critics and longtime followers pointed to as evidence that the sport's broader audience is still driven by a short list of names. Reese was front and center. The ratings were solid by off-season standards, and yet modest compared to WNBA regular season games featuring Clark this year. That doesn't make Reese a villain. It makes the expectations around her feel heavier when the league needs a bridge from September 2025 to opening night 2026. Where does the league go from here? Start with the basics: officiating and communication. The league must work with its referees to create a consistent standard for physical play off the ball. Everyone wants competitive defense. No one wants wrestling. If the rulebook says a hold is a foul in the first quarter, it has to be one in the fourth. Fans are sophisticated. They know the difference between tough and cynical. They also know inconsistency when they see it. Next, institutional transparency. If a star is out for weeks, say so. The WNBA is not the first league in the world to discover that vague injury timelines can harm the product. The NFL learned that years ago. So did the NBA. So has women's college basketball. Honesty gives fans time to adjust, and it preserves trust when expectations have to change mid-season. The WNBA also needs to broaden its storytelling. It has more than one marketable star. Aya Wilson is great and magnetic. Breanna Stewart is a generational winner. Sabrina Ionescu shoots the lights out and is New York's beating heart. Aaliyah Boston plays like a veteran and speaks like a captain. Kelsey Plum brings swagger and speed. Nafessa Collier has become a model of consistency. The league's marketing department can and should put more of those faces in the center of every screen. It helps take the heat off Clark the next time she plays 4 games in 8 days, and every beat reporter in the country is calling it a national emergency. At the local level, the Indiana Fever need to remind their fan base that this isn't a one-woman team. Kelsey Mitchell has been steady in every tough spot. Aaliyah Boston's leadership has grown in real time this season. Her presence is a big reason the Fever didn't collapse when the news on Clark got worse in July. Lexi Hull has given them edge and minutes they needed. That core matters. They're not just playing out the string. They're building a playoff identity that will be waiting when 2026 begins. Let's be clear about one more thing. None of the above means the league was wrong to ride the Caitlin Clark wave. It was right. Women's basketball has earned this attention. It has produced a product that can fill NBA arenas when the moment shows up. And Caitlin Clark deserved every one of those moments. She delivered them. She did it with charm off the court and menace on it. She walked into Dallas, Vegas, New York, and Chicago and gave those crowds exactly what they paid to see. What the WNBA must take away from this hard lesson is that player safety, officiating, and transparency are not optional when your league is exploding. They are the foundation. Without them, the next growth spurt collapses before it starts. How this season should be remembered for Caitlin Clark is not as a failure, but as a warning. A star can carry you only so long. The league around her has to carry some of the load too. That means teammates. That means officials. That means executives. That means competitors who understand that playing the villain is fun until fans start to believe you mean it. Angel Reese doesn't have to apologize for wanting to be the best. She does have to recognize that moments like this are bigger than her personal brand. The right words after Clark's announcement could have changed the tone of the week. A simple, "We're rooting for her recovery," is not weakness. It's sportsmanship. It's what leaders say when the cameras are on and the fans are strained. The market told us something as soon as Clark's season ended. Ticket prices moved. Ratings sagged around her games. Resales spiked for premium events. That is not a referendum on the sport. It is a snapshot of where the WNBA is in 2025. A league on the rise and still learning how to carry more than one storyline at a time. This is a solvable problem with smart management and cooperative ambition from its stars. If you want a reason for optimism, it's this: Caitlin Clark will be back in 2026. She won't take the health decision lightly. She'll approach rehab like a job. The Fever will treat the next 6 months like the most important off-season of the last decade. And the WNBA, if it listens to what this summer's mistakes have taught it, will emerge better prepared for the next wave. Do you believe the WNBA is to blame for how this unfolded? Should the league have stepped in earlier to protect its biggest draw? How would you fix the officiating and communication issues fans have called out for months? Tell us below. What's undeniable is this: women's basketball has reached a moment where it can't afford to get the simple things wrong. Not when the audience is finally here. Not when so many girls and boys are watching this league and deciding whether it's worth their time.